What's up, Beef? This is your boy, Sister, and welcome back to the channel for another modded companion build guide for Baldur's Gate 3. I hope y'all are having a fantastic day, because today we're cooking up a slightly thematic build guide for Jaheira, and you know what that means. If you're alright by Jaheira, you're alright by me. This build doesn't need to be used on Jaheira, so because she won't become a companion until the very end of Act 2, we're going to build this character as if you wanted to play it on a custom tab anyway, but I like rolling with it on Jaheira just because why not, and it's fun. Before we get ourselves into the build, thank you so much for watching. If you like modded build guides like this, let me know by liking the video and subscribing for more build guides like these. The class we're going to be using today is extremely versatile and has a ton of options for how to build it, so if you have an idea to make this build stronger, comment down below. But now, without further ado, let's get straight into the build. So, Jaheira's default class in the base game is a Circle of the Land Druid. She dual-wields scimitars and likes to combine spellcasting with her melee attacks and Panther Wild Shape. For this build, we're going to focus more on the Spellblade aspects of her character, since Wild Shape is generally kind of separate in how it progresses and equips itself. Since this build is using mods, let's go over which mods you need to craft this character. First off, we need the Arcane Vanguard class mod by creator Saethos. We also need Mystra Spells mod, since this class is compatible and will give us some extra options for our spellbook. But other than that, we're going full vanilla for just about everything else. So, like I mentioned, we're taking the Arcane Vanguard class for this build. The Arcane Vanguard features 4 unique subclasses, including the Eldritch, Judgment, Sentinel, and the Dervish. The Eldritch subclass focuses on status effects and light armor. Sentinel is a front-of-the-line support, which can also heal your allies. Dervish gains access to a list of unique melee attacks that it can use after casting spells, but the subclass we're going with today is the Judgment subclass, which wears heavy armor and obliterates enemies with high damage spells, which you then follow up with infused weapon attacks based on whatever spell you cast previously. This class is very heavily front-loaded, so we're going to be talking about what we get in level 1 here for a little while. One of the main features of the Arcane Vanguard is the ability to use ranged spell attacks as melee spell attacks when you're in close range, so we get the effects of that one pair of gloves from Act 3, but right from the start, without wearing those gloves. We get the ability here into the fray. Your ranged spell attacks are made as melee spell attacks. This effect can be toggled off, so that's really awesome. This is a huge boost for the class and already starts it off very powerful. Also, each time that you level up, you'll get to select a spell from each of 2 spell lists. You'll get to choose your Arcane Vanguard spells and your subclass spells. Each of the subclasses features a different spell list, so the Judgment subclass chooses from the Judgment spell list, the Sentinel chooses from the Sentinel spell list, and the Eldritch chooses from the Eldritch spell list. The Dervish instead has weapon actions, so it does not have its own spell list, but it does get access to the basic Arcane Vanguard spell list. Additionally, one of the primary features of our Judgment subclass is Infuse Elements. When you deal damage using a spell or cantrip, that spell infuses your weapon. Until the end of your next turn, you deal an additional 1d6 damage of that type on your first successful weapon attack. This is another awesome ability that comes from an item that is normally in the game, but with this feature, we can have it without having to wield that item, which is really cool. And because of that, our cantrip choices are incredibly important for this character because it will feed into our weapon damage and be highly affected by our gear choices. You could build out this subclass to focus on fire damage, cold damage, lightning, thunder, radiant, whatever you want to do. And this will have major implications for what spells we choose to take and what skills we want to specialize in and what armor synergizes with those skills and spells. As such, we're going to focus ourselves on dealing pure fire damage. So because Jaheira is a high elf, she gets a free cantrip, of which we're going to be taking Firebolt, because it's not available otherwise through our class. High Elf cantrips scale with Intelligence, which is lucky for us, because the Arcane Vanguard uses Intelligence as its spellcasting and attack modifier. For our class cantrips, we're going to be taking Create Bonfire from Mystra Spells. The main difference between this and Firebolt is that it's a concentration spell, and it can also burn our enemies, which will synergize well with our gear of choice. It puts out this little bonfire that you can put in a choke point in front of a door or something like that, and then any enemy that wants to come through is going to take fire damage and also get burned. So that's really cool and just makes for a really nice way to infuse our weapon attacks with fire damage after closing off a choke point. We also want to take Mage Hand for its utility, because you can use it to throw water bottles or do anything else. You can use it to solve puzzles, whatever you want. And we will also be taking Light as another good utility spell. In addition to these cantrips, the Judgment subclass also gets innate access to Thorn Whip, Sacred Flame, and Green Flame Blade. Green Flame Blade being the only one that we're really interested in, because Sacred Flame is only kind of useful, and Thorn Whip is also only kind of useful. For our Vanguard spells, we're going to start with Command, which is the best battlefield control spell in the game, as well as Armor of Agathis. Although Armor of Agathis is not a fire spell, it's still incredibly useful since we'll be in close range most of the time and will give us some temporary hit points. We're also going to be taking Inflict Wounds because it just does crazy damage in melee range. And for our subclass spells, we're choosing to start with Shield and Absorb Elements. Absorb Elements allows us to infuse our weapons even more than we did before, and Shield is a great spell for defense. I take this whenever I have a class that can take it because it is an awesome spell. The Arcane Vanguard class is also going to start with a fighting style, and the list here is fully unique and very interesting. There's some really cool options in here, like Read the Enemy. You're able to see and predict enemy blows, which makes it easier to dodge. When calculating your armor class, you use your intelligence modifier instead of dexterity. We have Expedient Mobility, which increases your movement speed by 6 meters, really great. Empower Arcana. The first time you deal damage with a weapon attack, you gain Empowered Arcana for 2 turns. This is basically just going to give you Arcane Acuity every time you do a weapon attack. This fighting style is incredibly powerful because Arcane Acuity is pretty busted, but we have another method of getting that, so we don't need to take this, and we can take something else that is more powerful for us. We also have Exposed Cuts. If you're wielding a melee weapon in one hand and nothing else in your other hand, when you damage a creature with a melee weapon attack, your next spell or cantrip will deal additional 3 slashing damage for the end of your next turn. This one's kind of like the dueling version, but makes your spells stronger. We also have Echoing Malice, which is more for an archer type build. When you damage a creature with a ranged weapon attack, mark the creature. The next time you deal damage with a spell or cantrip, deal 2d4 force damage to all enemies near your target. We're ultimately going to go with Spellmight Grasp. When you damage an enemy with a spell or cantrip while wielding a melee weapon in both hands, the target must make a strength saving throw or be pulled 3 meters towards you. This is really great because that means that we can hit a firebolt and then not have to run as far to close the gap, which is really cool because we're always going to be wielding 2 weapons as Jaheira because that's what she does. For our ability scores, we want to prioritize Intelligence and Constitution as our spellcasting modifier and eventually our attack modifier as well. Intelligence is our primary stat. So 16 is perfect here. 16 is also great for Constitution since we'll be up in the front lines most of the time and want to have that boost to our concentration saving throws as well as our HP. We want to have a 14 in Dexterity to get our max +2 to armor class and a +2 to our initiative. Our Wisdom is good at 12 for the mental saving throws, and we can dump both Strength and Charisma at 8s because we don't really need them that much. Okay, so that finally does it for level 1. Let's go ahead and move on to level 2. At level 2, we get Vanguard Stratagem, a passive which makes Intelligence our attack modifier, which is dope. We get this really early, and now we are just full-on Intelligence Gish. For our class spell, we're going to be taking Thunder Wave, since it's just a really fun way to knock our folks back and push them off ledges. For our subclass spell, we're going to start by taking Zephyr Strike, which allows us to move around the battlefield without triggering opportunity attack, and allows us to use Zephyr Strike while this spell is active. This spell is just okay for now, but there isn't much else that we're terribly interested in at the time being, so we're going to go ahead and start with Zephyr Strike. We also get access to a Vanguard talent, of which there are 4. We have Arcane Transposition, Arcanist Life Tether, Focused Shatter, and Liberated Spellcasting. Arcane Transposition allows you to trade places with an enemy. Arcanist Life Tether allows you to heal your allies within 3 meters of a marked target. Focused Shatter allows you to risk breaking concentration on one of your spells in exchange for doing extra damage. And Liberated Spellcasting, when you kill a creature, you gain the Liberated Spellcasting status. This feature may only be used once per short rest. What Liberated Spellcasting allows us to do is, after killing an enemy, we gain the ability to cast a cantrip with our reaction. So it just means that we can do even more damage on a single turn. We can only do it once per short rest, but we can still just have that one turn be really strong and really powerful and pump out a lot of damage. So we're going to take Liberated Spellcasting. When we get to level 3, we get Constructed Argument, which adds our Intelligence modifier to our Persuasion checks, which is very helpful if you're playing as a Tav, but not as much as just playing Jaheira. We also get Arcane Enlivening, which lets us regain 3 hit points at the end of our turn after getting hit by an attack, so it helps us to sustain ourselves for a little bit longer. For our Vanguard class spell, we're going to be taking Summon Moonblade from Mystra Spells. This is going to be our primary weapon throughout the rest of our game, believe it or not. It starts as a +1 magical flaming or chilling short sword, but as we level up, we can upcast it for even more damage and more enchantment points, so it can comfortably scale with us and enables us to do even more fire damage. It also doesn't require concentration and doesn't go away, so we can just kind of hold on to it and no need to worry about anything else. For our subclass spell, we have 3 really cool fire spells to choose from, being Scorching Ray, Dragon's Breath, and Agonizar's Scorcher. My pick here is going to be Scorching Ray because it uses attack rolls, but Flame Breath and Agonizer's Scorcher are both equally fun. We'll be taking those later, so Scorching Ray is a great start. At level 4, we get access to a new cantrip, and I'm going to be taking Blade Ward because reasons. For our Vanguard class spell, I'm going to be taking Mirror Image because it is a really nice boost to our defense, giving us a +9 whenever we cast. And for our subclass spell, I'm going to be taking Misty Step because it is just a really good utility option that allows us to teleport anywhere within range. We're also going to be getting a feat, and for our feat, we're going to be taking an ability score improvement to bump our intelligence score by 2. When we get to level 5, this class really starts to hit its stride. With our new War Magic ability, after casting a cantrip, we can make a weapon attack with our bonus action. Green Flame Blade, Create Bonfire, Firebolt, we can use them all on our main action to give us an extra flame-infused weapon attack on our bonus action. Super cool. Even cooler, for our class spell, we're going to be taking a Chardalon's Stride. This is going to replace Zephyr Strike for us because it also gives us no opportunity attacks and also does fire damage to enemies within 2 meters. So we can be extra fiery and bounce around the battlefield with ease. The spell is concentration, so we want to keep that in mind for our subclass spell, since many of them are concentration. For our subclass spell, we have a bunch of really cool options in here. We have access to Elemental Weapon, which would be really cool, but it requires concentration. Spirit Guardians and Spirit Shroud are both also really cool, which would be fun for a Radiant-themed build on this character, but once again, they are concentration. That said, I'm going to take Fireball because, well, Fireball. Since we don't need Zephyr Strike anymore, I'm going to go into the Replace Spell section and switch out Zephyr Strike for another Fire spell, and I'm going to replace it with Agonizer's Scorcher. At level 6, this class is going to get another Vanguard talent, and the one that we really want to grab is called Follow Up. You gain a +3 bonus to attack rolls when attacking after casting a spell or cantrip. This effect happens once per turn also, so we just cast a spell and then we always get a +3 attack on our bonus action. We basically are just going to benefit entirely from doing what we're normally going to do anyway, which is cantrip, weapon attack, and that weapon attack is going to have a nice big boost. You could also choose Vanguard Recovery, which allows you to restore 2 first-level spell slots once per short rest, which is also very powerful because it means that we can use Shield or other level 1 spell slots more frequently, but I'm going to go with Follow Up because getting that bonus to our attack roll is just really powerful. For our class spell, we're going to be taking Counterspell, because now that we have access to 3rd level spells, we have some really great options, but Counterspell is really my favorite one here. Haste is a great option, but because it takes concentration, it's not going to be very powerful for us above our other fire-based concentration spells. So Counterspell is a really great option here. And for our subclass spell, we want to take Conjure Barrage, because this one is going to do our melee damage in a big cone-shaped AoE, so we can just do some really big cleave damage with our weapons. At level 7, we get Vanguard Technique, which boosts our War Magic from just cantrips to now any spell. After the Vanguard casts a spell or cantrip, they can make a weapon attack using a bonus action, so no longer are we limited to just Firebolt and then or Bonfire and then a weapon attack. We can now do any of our fire-based spells or any of our spells in general and then have a free weapon attack afterwards. Really cool. For our Vanguard class spell, we have a ton of really cool 4th level spells available to us here. We have a bunch that are from the base game and a bunch of really cool ones from Mystra spells. You could go with something like Dimension Door or Greater Invisibility. Since we're wearing heavy armor, we're gonna have disadvantage on our stealth, so this one's not super great to be used on us. We also have access to spells like Wall of Fire, which is also really fun, but uses our concentration, so you'd have to sacrifice the Chardalon Stride or one of your other concentration spells for it. Either way, you could go with this one if you want to, but we have plenty of fire spells as it is, so I don't feel like we definitely need this one. The spell that I am going to be taking is called Elemental Bane from Mystra Spells, because it's a great debuff to put on a boss fight to increase our single target fire damage. The first time each turn the target takes damage of the chosen type, they take an extra 2d6 of that type. The target loses resistance to the chosen damage type. So if we're going up against a boss that normally has resistance to fire damage, we can go ahead and pop this debuff on them and then do fire damage to them, and they're going to take even more fire damage, and then we're going to be able to just wail on them even harder. And for our subclass spell, we also have a few interesting options to choose from. Fire Shield is a great spell for more defense and retaliatory damage to attackers, but Web of Fire from Mystra Spells does insane damage to either multiple targets or to a single target. You can do 5 streaks of fire snake toward different enemies. Each strike deals 8d6 fire damage, or you can combine them all together into one big single target fire spell that does 12d8 damage. It's kind of like Scorching Ray on steroids. But we already have a ton of fire spells, so this depends more on what your party needs at the time. Do you need more defense or more fire damage? I like defense, so I'm going to be taking Fire Shield. At level 8, we're going to get to pick some new spells. For our Vanguard class spell, I'm going to be taking Freedom of Movement because it is a really great utility buff for us to put on ourselves or our allies. And for our Judgment subclass spell, we're going to be taking Web of Fire because I really wanted to take it last time and didn't. For our feat, we're going to scroll down and take ourselves the Warcaster feat because this is going to give us advantage on saving throws to maintain concentration on a spell. You can also use a reaction to cast Shock and Grasp at a target moving out of melee range. That's okay, but the main thing that we want here is the advantage on concentration saves because this character concentrates a lot and we like to be able to keep that up as much as possible. At level 9, we get a new ability called Break the Line, which allows us to sacrifice our HP regeneration from Arcane Enlivening to do a big AoE weapon attack in a line. We can do it either melee or ranged. We're primarily going to be doing melee because we're not really a ranged character unless we're doing spells. We're also going to get access to 5th level spells, and for our class spell, we want Hold Monster. This is why we like spells that use attack rolls. While we're concentrating on it, we can just walk up to them and get instant crits on everything, so we don't have to worry about jack shit except doing mega damage. And for our subclass spell, we have some really great options to choose from here. Destructive Wave is really cool and knocks enemies prone, doing thunder and radiant damage. Flame Strike is also really cool and does fire damage and radiant damage. Cone of Cold is also really cool and does 8d8 of cold damage in a cone in front of you. Immolation is really cool. Point at the target and set them alight, dealing 8 to 48 damage and immolating every turn. So this one is another concentration spell that does a bunch of fire damage. We also have Holy Weapon, imbue a weapon with holy power to deal an additional 2d8 radiant damage. The weapon becomes magical for the purpose of overcoming resistance and immunity to non-magical damage, and it emits bright light over 9 meters. So we have a bunch of really cool spells here to choose from, but ultimately the one that I'm going to go with is Flame Strike because it is massive fire and radiant damage in an AoE, and we're a fire build, so let's go ahead and take it. At level 10, this class is going to get access to another Vanguard talent, and here we have a pretty big choice to make. We can choose to either go more defensive or more brutal with our spell attacks. Vanguard's protection works very well in a party composition and allows us to mitigate damage done to our whole party by our intelligence modifier for 5 turns, which is insanely powerful. When you activate it on a bonus action, you and nearby allies reduce damage taken equal to your intelligence modifier for 5 turns. It doesn't have any other cost besides that, so we can just pop this up and get free damage reduction. Precision Casting, on the other hand, gives us the spell version of Great Weapon Master. We can toggle an ability to sacrifice a -5 to our spell attack rolls for an extra 1d8 damage. Now, if you use Hold Monster, you can guarantee crits, so that means a huge boost to damage against held monsters. And for that reason, I'm going to take this one. For our cantrip, I'm going to be taking Minor Illusion because it's a very useful spell. For our class spell, we already have the vast majority of the fire spells that we want, so I'm actually going to go back to a level 2 spell and grab Volley of Arrows. This comes from Mystra spells and allows us to fire 5 arrows that deal 1d6 piercing damage. One of the great things about this is that because we have the ability that allows us to cast our ranged spells in melee, we can do a Volley of Arrows in melee range and not have a penalty for it. And it counts as a spell attack, but also melee attack, so it's really cool. And for our subclass spell, we're going to be taking Immolate, big time fire damage, over time on a single target. Really easy. I mentioned this last time, but we're going to take it right now because why not? We don't have anything else that we really want that badly, unless you want to take Destructive Wave or Cone of Cold, but this one's a fire damage spell, so it's thematic with our build, and we're going to go ahead and take it. At level 11, we get a passive ability, which adds our intelligence modifier to 1 attack per turn on top of our normal damage, which is really awesome. We also get access to 6th level spells, but we want to keep in mind that we only have 1 6th level spell slot, and we kind of want to use it on something that isn't even a 6th level spell. By this point in the game, we can use staves that have Arcane Battery to recover spell slots, so that will help, but we don't want to rely on them too heavily because we can only do them so often. Tensor's transformation sounds really cool, transform yourself into the perfect warrior, but it comes with a caveat in that it prevents all spell casting, so it's literally worthless to us. Fissure is cool, but we don't really need it that much. We can also use scrolls for Globe of Invulnerability too, so we don't really need to take this very much. Instead, I'm going to take Dimension Door, because it's a really great spell, and we don't really have anything 6th level that really is calling our name, so we're going to go ahead and take Dimension Door for the utility. For our subclass spell, though, we're going to be taking Elemental Investiture. This comes to us from Mr. Spell Mods, and is a little bit tough to explain, because it says here, embody yourself with an element of your choice, gaining immunities, resistances, and other elemental abilities. other elemental abilities is kind of vague, so there's like a bunch of different effects you can add to it, and the spell is a little bit tough to explain in the character creator here, so we're going to go over it later, but trust me, it's pretty nuts. At level 12, we can pick whatever spells we want that we didn't take before. There aren't many 6th level spells that are good for this build, and like I mentioned before, we only have one slot, so take whatever else you want. It's kind of up to personal preference. I'm actually going to grab Heat Metal because it's a level 2 spell slot and is a really good fire spell for us to use. And for our subclass spell, I'm going to grab Destructive Wave because it does thunder and radiant damage and knocks our enemies prone. And for our final feat, we're going to be topping ourselves off with another ability score improvement to get our intelligence up to 20. And that is pretty much where that ends. But now that we are done leveling this character, let's take a look at some of the equipment and gear. So the Arcane Vanguard Fire version has a bunch of really cool options in order for you to be able to gear it, because we can go towards any of the elements that we want to. There's a ton of variety for how you want to put different equipment on your character to get different effects. Since we're doing fire, we're going to focus on things that stack our fire abilities. The first of which is the Hat of Fire Acuity. When you deal fire damage, you gain Arcane Acuity for 2 turns. We're always going to be dealing fire damage, so we're going to be stacking Arcane Acuity really fast. Alternatively, when you get to Act 3, you could choose to use the Pyro Quickness Hat. When you deal fire damage with a leveled spell, which we're going to be doing a lot, you burn yourself and gain an additional bonus action this round. The main effect that we're after here is the bonus action, because since we're doing attacks on our bonus action, we can have 2 attacks, or we can use our attack for something else that I'll get to in a little bit. We're also going to be using the Cloak of Elemental Absorption for our cloak, which allows us to absorb elemental damage once per short rest, take half damage from the next elemental attack targeting you, and deal an additional 1d6 of that element type on your next attack. So if someone hits us with a fire attack, we can then imbue our weapon with another 1d6 fire, so we just get another nice imbuement out of that. For our armor, we're going to be using the Flawed Helldusk armor. When you are hit by a foe within 2 meters, it might take 1d4 fire damage. You take 1 less piercing damage, and you have disadvantage on stealth checks. The main reason that we want this armor is because whenever we get hit by an attack, it's going to do retaliatory fire damage, which is going to stack with some extra retaliatory damage that we have set up. We're also going to be using the Helldusk gloves. You gain a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls and spell save DC. Your weapon attacks deal an additional 1d6 fire damage, and we'll get strength saving throws +1 and the Rays of Fire cantrip, which is just a little like Scorching Ray for free. We're going to use the Boots of Arcane Bolstering. Each time they dash, the wearer gains Arcane Charge for 2 turns. Arcane Charge is a really cool ability. While threatened, affected entity has a +2 bonus to damage with spells. What this means is that whenever an enemy that we're next to is threatened, because we're going to hit them with an attack, they're going to take a +2 bonus to their damage with spells every time we dash. So this is just really great, because if we dash, we'll get some free arcane charges. We're also going to use the Necklace of Elemental Augmentation. When one of your cantrips deals acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage, add your spellcasting modifier to the damage dealt. So this is just going to mean that our cantrips that deal fire damage are going to get a +5 to the damage once we're at level 12 and have the intelligence of 20. We're going to use the Ring of Arcane Synergy. When you deal damage with a cantrip, you gain Arcane Synergy for 2 turns. Arcane Synergy is going to increase the damage of our weapon attacks by our spellcasting ability modifier. So each of our weapon attacks are going to get an extra 5 damage, and we're going to have 2 turns of that every time that we do a cantrip attack, which is pretty frequently. We're going to get ourselves a +5 to our weapon attacks. And finally, we're going to use the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. After hitting a creature with a weapon attack, you can cast illusion or enchantment spells as a bonus action. This ring pairs really well with the Pyro Quickness Hat, because what it means we're going to be able to do is start our turn with our main action by dealing fire damage with a leveled spell, burning ourselves, and then gaining an additional bonus action. So now we have 2 bonus actions. The first of which we're going to use for a melee attack, and the second of which we can use to do command and tell every enemy in our area to just go ahead and sit the hell down. That way we can shut down the battlefield. It's very similar to the Smite Bard, but uses fire and a ton of usher spells that the Smite Bard doesn't get access to. For our bow, we're going to be using the Hell Rider Longbow, which gives us a +3 bonus to initiative rolls and advantage on perception ability checks. Once per turn, a creature hit by this weapon will possibly be afflicted with fairy fire. The main thing that we want here is just the nice +3 we get to our bonus initiative rolls. Really awesome, really great. And for our weapon, we're going to be using the Moonblade as our primary weapon. When you first pick this spell and cast it at 2nd level, you will summon a +1 magical flaming short sword that deals a bonus 1 fire damage. You could also do the cold version, but we're going to go with the fire damage version. But as you level it up and upcast it, you can do at 3rd level, the damage changes to a 1d4 fire damage. At 4th level, it becomes a 1d6, and the +1 becomes a +2. At 5th level, it becomes a 1d8 fire damage. And finally, at level 6, it becomes a +3 magical weapon with 2d4 fire damage. So we're going to go ahead and summon this in. And now we have our Flaming Moonblade, which is really freaking sick. Has this really cool flame look on it. It's a super cool looking sword, and you really just can't go wrong with it. It has a +3 weapon enchantment, gives us an additional +1 to our armor class, and gives us resistance to fire damage. Additionally, it comes with a new ability called Moonblade/Fire, which does 1d6 plus 13 slashing damage, plus 2d4 fire, plus 1d6 fire, plus 1d4 fire. Additionally, it also burns our enemies for 3 turns, so we can inflict that burning and get some really cool extra fire damage off of it. Because Jaheira likes to dual wield, once we get to Act 3, we're going to give her the Belm Scimitar. This is a really cool scimitar that does 1d6 plus 2 slashing, plus 5 slashing, plus 1d6 fire, and also it has a +2 weapon enchantment and gives us Perfectly Balanced Strike, which is a really cool weapon ability. What Perfectly Balanced Strike allows us to do is send Belm snaking out with an Adder's Speed, the very exemplar of swiftness embodied in steel. And basically what this allows us to do when it's in our offhand is get the same bonus from our main hand weapon while attacking, so that we can get a nice bonus and also just do more damage to it. So these two swords are very powerful in combination and are going to allow us to do tons of damage with our dual wielding attacks. We just want to make sure that we toggle our dual wielding so that we're not doing our attack with both right off the gate. I almost forgot to show off what the elemental investiture can do. I popped on infinite spellcasting here just so I can show you what they all different do, because I'm going to cast it 4 times. But if we pop open in elemental investiture here, it's a concentration spell, and we have 4 different options: investiture of fire, investiture of ice, stone, and wind, and each of these come with some really cool abilities. With fire, we've imbued ourselves with this fire here, and we get all sorts of really cool bonuses to go along with it. We get Wreath in Flames. We increase our armor class by 1. We get immunity to fire and resistant to cold damage. You can move through difficult terrain without spending extra movement and cannot fall prone. You deal 2d6 fire damage to enemies within 2 meters, and you gain the ability to blast a line of fire that deals 4d8 fire damage. If you wanted to use any of the other forms, the ice form will imbue you with ice and make you all icy, and will give you the same basic effects, but it will create this area of ice around your character that you can kind of skate around on at the end of every turn. Karlach didn't like that. Sorry, Karlach. If we switch over to the stone version, this one is a defense-heavy one. It's going to give us a +3 to our armor class, giving us resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical weapons. It gives you a slam ability that allows you to do 4d8 piercing damage and the possibility to knock enemy creatures prone. And if we use the investiture of wind, it'll give us this tornado around us that allows us to increase our armor class by 2. Ranged weapon attacks have disadvantage against you. You can move through difficult terrain without spending extra movement and cannot fall prone. You gain the ability to fly and can push enemies away from you, dealing 4d8 bludgeoning damage. If you decide to use this, I highly recommend using the fire version. But for sake of the combat that we're about to do, I am not going to use it, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn off the concentration. So we're going to get combat started here by having Karlach do something nasty, and she's going to attack somebody just for fun. And now, because we want to keep our other characters safe, we're going to use Torment so that we can taunt our enemies into attacking Karlach. Okay, so it is now Jaheira's turn, and we are going to get busy. The first thing we're going to do is Web of Fire with the multi version, and now we can snake out a bunch of attacks to all 3 of these guys in a big web, or all 5. This guy's already dead. The other ones have taken some pretty serious damage, but now that we've done a leveled fire spell, we have a second bonus action. So what we're going to do is make sure that we have our dual wielding taken off, and we're going to come over to this guy, Fist Jepson, give him a smack for 14 and 10 damage with our main hand weapon. And now our Band of the Mystic Scoundrel has activated, and we can do one of a few different things. We can cast Mirror Image to give ourselves a +9 bonus to our armor class. We can use Command, or we can use Hold Monster. I'm going to use Command, and let's do Command Grovel. Let's upcast it to 3rd level, and let's choose this guy, and this guy. 2 of them made it, 1 of them saved. That's okay. We can end our turn. Another stuck just sitting there. Yep, sorry, bud. He's going to try to command grovel us, but too bad, because I'm going to counterspell it. Not on my watch. Karlach, I'm going to let you kill this guy. Now let's end your turn. We don't need you to kill the whole group. So Jaheira has been ensnared, which is unfortunate, but that is okay because we still have a bunch of these really cool abilities. For instance, we're now going to use our Ashardalon Stride and upcast it to, let's do level 5, just because I want to. And so upcasting Ashardalon Stride is going to increase the damage that it does, and at level 5, it's going to do 3d6 fire damage in a little area around us. Now this guy is in our range, so he's going to be taking fire damage. And then we're going to break our Arcane Enlivening by doing Break the Line, which is going to do this nice little boom! Some serious damage there. Let's counterspell the command grovel again, because I don't want to be groveled. Let's come over here and kill this guy. That's right, Karlach. He's a poor fucker. Thank you for ending. So now we have our Ashardalon Stride, so we can just run circles around these guys, dealing fire damage to them. Boom, Ashardalon Stride. Let's just hit him with a regular weapon attack. Boom! And now we have our bonus action to do whatever we want. I'm going to use command grovel at level 1. Target out of sight. Let's not do that then. So I'm going to use mirror image. And now we're good to go. Oh, well, he didn't last very long. On account of Ashardalon Stride. Sorry, bud. Mirror image saves us. Once again. And then Karlach, she doesn't need to do anything. You don't need to do anything either. We have our movement speed increased, so we can go really far. Oh, I'm sorry, Gale. I didn't mean to Ashardalon Stride you. So we're not quite close enough to do a melee attack, but we are still good to do something like volley of arrows. Target's too close. I'm too close for a range attack, but that's lame. Let's just do this. Let's just Misty Step back. Over here. And then we're going to volley of arrows. Well, that was a lot of misses, but then we did some other ones. Now Jaheira's pissed. We're going to Scorching Ray this boy. At level 3. We did damage, so we have a bonus thingy. Let's do a ranged one. Boom! That's been broken, and now we're going to use Command Grovel. Sit down! We're going to come over. He can't do nothing. And now we're going to do something. We're going to... Let's just do Green Flame Blade. Actually, no, we can't, because we already used it as a reaction. Let's see what this Moonblade Slash does. It's a nice big fire attack. Ah! Awesome. Now we've pretty much made it through this. We've lost a little bit of damage, but that's okay. That's part of playing the game. Oh, who's this guy? Manip Falco. Well... I love doing that. It's so much fun doing that volley of arrows. Oh, who is this? Fun? Who's fun? It's this dang doppelganger. What the? Come here, bud. Let's disintegrate him. But that just about does it for this Baldur's Gate 3 modded companion build guide for Jaheira as an Arcane Vanguard focused on fire damage pretty specifically. What do you think of this build? Is there anything else that you think would go better with it to make it a little bit stronger or maybe a little bit more fun? Whatever you think, just let me know in the comments down below. If you like these kind of modded build guides, let me know by liking the video or subscribing to my channel for more build guides like this. We're getting closer and closer to the end of this series, building a fully modded Ultra Mega Party, and the next and final companion that we have to take care of is Minsk of Rashomon, Stone Lord himself. So I'm really excited for building him out into a thematic character. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all in the next one.